My name is Victor Okafor. I'm the head of the Department of Africology and African American Studies. As I welcome you, I really wish that this was a different location from many other occasions when I have stood before an EMU audience to say a word of welcome. Today is obviously different. We are gathered here to mourn and yet celebrate Dr. Ana Maria Monteiro-Ferreira, Associate Professor of Africology and African American Studies, a tireless scholar, a committed teacher, a discerning, clear-headed, and dedicated Africologist who left us suddenly on September 12th. It all happened 8 years ago. That is fall 2010, when we had the fortune of having Dr. Ferreira join our faculty. Today, 8 years later, we can proudly proclaim that Dr. Ferreira's contributions impacted positively upon the scholarly, instructional, and service profiles of our academic department. Indeed, from my standpoint, Dr. Ferreira's departure has left a hole in the life of our department in each of those three pillars of our academic mission, namely our scholarship, our instructional goods, and our service to both the university and the community at large. In fact, as an acknowledgement of Dr. Ferreira's hard work, dedication, and commitment, in 2016, I presented to her a Department Head's Award for her outstanding service to the Department of Africology and African American Studies beyond the call of duty. This was one of only 2 Department Head Awards that I have conferred upon a faculty member since I stepped into this administrative role. As an Africologist, Dr. Ferreira was securely and proudly grounded in the philosophical and epistemological framework of our discipline. She exuded immense self-confidence and was a dependable and credible defender of the discipline. It mattered that Dr. Ferreira was not confused about the essence and meaning of Africology or why she chose to be part of it in the first place. As all who came across her or worked with her would attest, Dr. Ferreira was deeply passionate about her chosen discipline. I once read a book called Teaching What You Are Not. In it, Dr. Jacqueline Jones, a historian, averred that, quote, the single most important qualification for any professor in any field is expertise, unquote. For us, Dr. Ferreira symbolized the premium that our Department of Africology and African American Studies places upon both professorial expertise and an epistemology that then lends creed agency to the persons and communities being studied. Through her scholarly contributions, such as her award-winning The Demise of the Inhuman, Afrocentricity, Modernism, and Postmodernism, Dr. Ferreira left behind a legacy and sowed an intellectual seed that will continue to bear fruit. I appreciate the fact that you found time to join us to bid a final farewell to Dr. Ferreira. I want to crave your indulgence, for we have before us this afternoon a list of several tasks to execute within the next 2 hours. Please note that at the end of this memorial, we would like you to join us for a 2 p.m. candlelight march from here to the MLK Plaza. The march shall commence through the ground floor entrance to this auditorium. For now, let me bring to the stage my co-master of ceremony and EMU colleague, Dr. Teresa Merrill, a good friend of Dr. Ferreira's and Professor of Music Therapy, Department of Music and Dance.
Thank you, Dr. Good afternoon and welcome. It's wonderful to see so many faces. So I'd like to also offer my welcome to each of you as we honor our friend, colleague, teacher, mother, sister, and beloved spouse. First, what we do today here is part of an ancient tradition, and a ritual that crosses cultural differences, and that involves speaking the name of the deceased into the air and extolling their many positive qualities and their virtues. So today we're here to speak the name of Ana Monteiro-Ferreira into the air and to reflect on her excellent contributions to life. It is not a small thing that we do. Many years ago, I was deeply influenced by a documentary I watched with Bernice Johnson Reagan of Sweet Honey in the Rock. And if I can quote her, sound is a way to extend the territory you can affect. Communal singing is a way of announcing that you are here and possessing the territory. She goes on to say that when the police or the sheriff would enter mass meetings she was involved in and start taking pictures and names, she said, we knew our jobs were on the line and maybe more. Inevitably, someone would begin a song. So everyone was singing, and we had taken back the air in that space. I love that, taking back the air in the space. So since hearing that, I became aware of the power of holding the airspace through sound. I'm a musician, I'm a music therapist, this is a lived truth for me. But I'm also aware that we claim and hold space with words also. Words are powerful. The words we choose are powerful. And no one knew that better than Ana. And so today we claim the air of this space and the space around it as we speak her name into the atmosphere and we speak aloud her many good qualities and her contributions. And make no mistake, this is what we do, and it is very significant. In this beginning part, I also would like to say that we are a community that is grieving. We're grieving from near and from far, from different proximities to Ana, and from our different positions with her. We are grieving intrapersonally as well, from our different positions with death. We may have well-developed coping strategies from previous experiences, or this may be the first time some of us have experienced a loss to sudden death. I want to say here that there is no correct way, no right way to grieve. That said, it is common to experience shock and disbelief, especially in a sudden loss. You may have difficulty concentrating, you might feel not quite present, or you might feel a dull kind of padding around your mind. People sometimes experience these concentrated moments unable to even read through a sentence. That's not uncommon. And you may also feel intensely sad, and you may cry and feel depressed. Anger is often also common for people. You may feel the need to know details. You want to know everything. It's a natural approach to coping with with a very shocking and perhaps unnatural event. It leads to understanding and then to healing. So these are all typical responses to a shock of this kind. But there are great variations in responses, and I want to say that if you feel that you have prolonged or intense grief responses, then it might be time to seek some support. And here at EMU, students are entitled to support through our counseling and psychological services at Snow Health, CAPS. Please do reach out if you are feeling the need for that. There are also informal sources of support through your trusted faculty members and mentors. And now, as we move forward with this memorial celebration of life, I'd like to introduce our Associate Dean for Programs, Dr. William Doug Baker.
Thank you, Tara. It's my honor and privilege to represent the College of Arts and Sciences in the Dean's Office and say a few words about Dr. Ana Monteiro-Ferreira, an international scholar, professor of African American Studies, teacher, mentor, colleague, and friend. We are grateful Dr. Monteiro-Ferreira's many family members and friends, mentor, and colleagues, and students can attend reflection and celebration of her life. Later, you'll hear more about Dr. Monteiro-Ferreira's prolific scholarship. She was an international scholar, one who spoke and read multiple languages, published research in multiple countries, and contributed to international, national, and local conversations and debates, particularly in areas of Afrocentric and Western theoretical and philosophical paradigms, African and African American literatures, gender studies, Black women's studies, and cultural studies. Dr. Monteiro-Ferreira contributed greatly to the University College and her department, including serving on committees to guide decisions and create opportunities for students. In fall 2016, when racist incidents on campus and across the nation ignited calls for uncomfortable conversations centered on race, identity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, Dr. Monteiro-Ferreira was ready, waiting for many of us to catch up, to prepare, to act. For the past 2 years, she was a member of and a main contributor to the college's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Last year, she coordinated 5 workshops designed for faculty and staff to understand more about a range of topics centered on race and the need for equitable solutions to historical and current dilemmas and violence and inconsistencies among voice and action and reason. Most impressively, aside from her vision for the workshops, her preparation, and her capacity to deliver messages supported by mounds of research and experience, was how she included her students. Instead of quickly compiling a list of critical topics, she invited students to assist her in developing the topics for the workshops. She invited other students to present, to be part of the activism we need so much in our country. In other words, she showed students how to contribute, how to become activists, how to use their emerging knowledge and perspectives and educational privilege to model and lead others. Dr. Ana Monteiro-Ferreira also demonstrated her humility as a person and as a scholar. When I committed a microaggression when introducing her at one of the workshops, I failed to include her professional title as I had another professor. Ironically, the workshop was on microaggressions. She only acknowledged my error because of my need to reflect on it, as I recognized how my actions, unintentional or not, had consequences for her identity and for the perceptions of younger scholars in the room. As I know most of you feel, I'm fortunate to have worked with Dr. Monteiro-Ferreira. Her commitment, scholarship, and kindness inspired us. For the next hour or so, we will hear much more about her life. we may feel at times confined to piecing together reflections and stories of her life in order to find meaning in our lives. The meaning resides in her scholarship, in her interactions, in our interactions with her, and in how we use these experiences to generate our own visions, or to build on hers, to generate change that Dr. Monteiro-Ferreira urged us to see and contribute to, particularly for students in our shared future. Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Monteiro-Ferreira. Next, we have 3 students and former students, Michaela Evans, Rashid Atwater, and Desmond Robinson. And that will be followed by poetry by Lauren Smith. Thank you.
And I am a department lecturer in Africology and African American Studies, and a former graduate student of Dr. Monteiro-Ferreira. And I'm honored and saddened to be standing here today, but I did produce some good words for a good woman. Dr. Anna Monteiro-Ferreira. What a wonderful woman. As one of her students and a colleague, I am deeply shocked at the sudden loss of the life from such a happy-spirited woman, a happy-spirited person. To many students, she was helpful, a helpful professor, one that helped students understand the importance of Africology and African American Studies. She helped students research and taught students how to study materials and craft articulate responses with critical thinking and a critical mind frame. Students were engaged in her classes, always participating, and some students met new lifelong friendships, and others discovered a lifelong passion for African American studies. Dr. Ferreira's rigor and vigorous approach to her discipline are invaluable. She worked diligently on preparing the new master's degree in Africology and African American Studies, which just launched this semester at EMU. That's She worked on that thing fervently, I tell you. I mean, it must have taken her 2 years to do all the paperwork and go through all the meetings and get all the approvals. And every time I see her in the office or in the hallway, I was like, how's the master's degree coming along? And she's like, it's coming. It's coming. Every time I see her. My colleagues and I in the PhD program that were taking our graduate classes, we were taking them as Cognate members, Cognate courses, because our department didn't have the kind of knowledge that we were seeking, and we were really grateful. We were the 2 little graduate PhD students sitting in the back of the undergraduate classroom, getting the same knowledge, but doing a lot more writing. and I appreciated so much about her, and the way she taught, and her tenacity for just getting things done. So I definitely thank her for getting that up and running, because I look forward to seeing many more master's students in our program. She was a mentor to so many students, a favorite professor to many, many others, and she helped so many students grow scholarly and personally in their Afrocentric understanding. Her most recent publication, The Demise of the Inhuman, should be celebrated as much as she is celebrated in her discipline. If you do not have a copy, go get a copy today, because that book right there, it really taught me how to be a better human being. It taught me how to be more human to my humans. And it taught me a lot about Afrocentricity as a human being on this planet. I recommend it for every person to read. As a woman and as a scholar, I think that we should all move towards Dr. Allen's vision of being more humane, being more human humans, and loving our discipline and understanding each other a lot better. Signed with love, Makayla D. Evans Cochran. We now have Rashid Atwater, a former student of Dr. Ferreira's.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rashid Atwater, and I'm a student of Dr. Allen's. Before I begin any praise of Dr. Allen, I'd like to extend my deepest condolences to her family, friends, and loved ones. We're so grateful for the support that you gave her over the years that strengthened her to be able to do the work that she did to inspire and change our lives forever. Thank you so much. I was tasked to take 5 minutes to say something that details what Dr. Allen means to me and all our students. And unfortunately, that time limit is not nearly enough to begin to explain the impact she had on her student lives. What I will do is try to describe how she revolutionized my heart and mind. I first met Dr. Allen in the winter semester of 2013, room 306 of Perth Bureau. I walked into class arrogant. I had A in my previous African American Studies class. I had read some of the stuff she already had in the syllabus. I got this. This is going to be easy. This is going to be an easy A. This is kind of just a formality. I have to take this class so I can get that. I studied African American Studies at the time because it was a hobby. And I loved to debate just for the sake of debating. And through the course of meeting and knowing her, my hobby became life's work. And Dr. Allen was the example I didn't know I needed to follow towards their journey. When Dr. Allen first walked into the room, I thought she was a graduate student. I could never imagine that a Portuguese woman would have interest in African American studies, let alone a PhD from the Temple University, and a professor teaching a course on foundational knowledge. Minutes into the lecture, I was amazed by my prowess, humbled by my ignorance, and hungry for all the information I could get from her. Over the short time of knowing her, my image of Dr. Allen transformed from professor to mentor to mother. When I was confident in my ability to write and conduct research, she helped me publish my first academic article. When I didn't know how to become active in my community and teach, she provided me with a book of Afrocentric lesson plans to teach my students at Park Ridge. In times of uncertainty whether I pursue a PhD or not, she introduced me to my academic heroes and allowed me to substitute teach for her, giving me full autonomy in lesson planning. In this very short time, she transformed an argumentative, individualistic kid into an Afrocentrist in training that places community before self, works towards God, and asserts his agency in every situation because he was empowered to do so. Although our intellectual giant and caring mother is physically gone, she will always be with us in our mind, writings, and heart. As her students, we have a responsibility to uphold of humanizing the world. She has paved the way for future scholars to follow in her footsteps and become critical, active agents in this backward world to achieve victory. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Dr.
Hello everyone, my name is Desmond Robinson. I am a senior psychology major here at EMU, but I graduated in 2020. I do a lot of different things on campus to improve our campus goals for diversity, inclusion, and equity. I have been awarded several student leadership awards in the past 2 years for my work, and I don't plan to slow down anytime soon. Today, we honor an incredible Jen, who we were blessed to have on our campus. She's been all over the world, and we were benefited by having her here with us. Dr. Anna was a vigorous, humble, intelligent, thorough, honest, uplifting, courageous, personable, enlightening, empowering, energetic, bright mentor, co-worker, professor, researcher, writer, family member, and friend to us all. I remember when I would catch her on campus sometimes, and she'd be happy to see me. Those who know me know that I am very enthusiastic. So when I get a chance to meet someone who expresses equal effervescence, I get really happy as well. I say, "How are you, Dr. Anna?" And she'd reply, "I'm very good, how are you?" Just like her, always wondering how others are doing, because simply, she cared about people and our relationship with each other. Dr. Anna and I met through the College of Arts and Sciences workshops last year. She and Rashid presented their research in the project they were working on. And I remember her findings based off of student of color responses that students reported facing racism from various entities on campus, but most of these incidents came from their own peers. This struck me because it gave me validation. I am constantly trying to build unity amongst our equals. Her presenting this information is a call to action to not just the faculty, administration, and staff, but to our students, to combat hatred and discrimination on campus. Through this presentation, I knew that I had to connect with her, and I wanted to learn more from her. At the time, my friend Stephen Scotty enlisted me to work on a unity mural with them. I was tasked with finding speakers from diverse backgrounds at EMU to talk about what unity means to them and how we will see it through. She was so excited to attend. She wanted to talk about, among other things, and I quote, "the power of the new generations to bring about a more inclusive society where diversity will finally mean equality." Let's just say she did a wonderful job in relaying her message at the mural, which is now hanging in McKinney, and you can definitely tell by these two testimonies that her life as a professor and as a mentor, she definitely achieved those goals. My friend Emily said she really appreciated the encouraging office hours she had with her, and even though she wasn't my professor, she surely taught me that being passionate about my work and my work's future is pertinent, and I should relentlessly seek to improve it. In closing, I want to draw attention to the weather. As you know, when we lost Aretha Franklin, Prince, and Michael Jackson, it rained for a long time. But for some reason, again, you remember, but for some reason, it's been noticeably shiny and blue sky. I find this to be a symbol of the legacy Dr. Anna is leaving behind. She's given us so much and invested in us so much, and I cannot wait to see it flourish in my peers. We are the future she believes in. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lauren Smith, and I'm an African American Studies minor. And this semester, I have the pleasure of meeting Dr. Auditorium for the Foundations of Knowledge in African American Studies. And though I only was able to meet her once, I could see that she was a very passionate, kind, and wise woman. And today I have the pleasure of presenting a poem I wrote for her entitled Supernova. Little star, rise high as the sunrise, past the dusk and beyond the moonlight. Pressure from the universe, though so unjust, created you to be strong and victorious. With elements so light, so gentle and true, your fight, laugh, and liberation shine only the best reflection of you. Now it's on to the next lifetime, and you've molded so many. Your core left in each of us, future stars ready to combust. Little star, you've made your mark in the heavens and in our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you all. At this stage, I would like to bring to the stage, one by one, two colleagues of ours who worked with Dr. Ferreira and who can attest to the substantial nature of the contribution that Dr. Ferreira made to scholarship. The first person is Dr. Peggy Leggett, Director of the Bruce K. Nelson Faculty Development Center of Eastern Michigan University.
I'm going to start out with a poem because it's appropriate. And it's written by Robert Herrick in the 1600s called To Daffodils. Fair daffodils, we weep to see you haste away so soon. As yet the early rising sun has not attained his noon. Stay, stay until the hastening day has run. But to the even song, and having prayed together we will go with you along. We have short time to stay as you, we have as short as spring. A quick a growth to meet decay, as you or anything we die. As your hours do and dry away, like to the summer's rain, or as the pearls of morning dew, ne'er to be found again. And if you know this book called Poems to Read, a particular person picked this poem for a reason. And 13-year-old McKenna said this about this poem. This poem is important to me because it reminds me of life. Like a daffodil, we grow from a seed, bit by bit. Some leaves form and the stem starts to grow. I'm a biologist, so I really am into this idea about it, a metaphor for flowers growing. Then comes the bud, the time in your life when your personality starts to bloom. Then your middle-aged years come along and your real life starts. As you grow older, your petals start to fall and your stem turns to brown. You eventually die and are missed. Many others long to have you come back. Then, as spring comes along again, a new person or daffodil is born. You never know what you have lost until it's gone. Anna was in her middle ages, just starting her real life, when she died last week. And like the poem about our reflection on the life cycle of daffodils, you often don't realize what you've lost until it's gone. EMU President James Smith yesterday gave his State of the University address, and he urged people to tell the positive stories about EMU. And I'd like to tell my story about knowing Ana Ferreira so that we may never forget her part in our EMU community. To me, Ana has started out her real life and has become a stellar teacher, scholar, and service-minded professional in higher education. Students have given her good to great evaluations, and you just heard several students talk about how they have been passionately influenced by Ana, Dr. Ana. Her publication record included an influential book. You've heard many talk about this. And her diligent service helped to create the new Masters of Arts in Africology and African American Studies, which you've also heard how important that new master's is. She was a model faculty member. I first met Ana in the new faculty orientation, and she's been a good colleague ever since. We've had many conversations. One in particular was putting her tenure and promotion materials together, and she asked for a couple of tips on how to organize that. And then she came to me when her tenure and promotion was finalized, and we celebrated with a hug. And I asked her, would you be willing to share your narratives with new faculty as a model? And so we use those narratives even today. So thank you, Ana, for sharing that part of you with us. When Ana's book, The Demise of the Inhuman, Africology, Modernism, and Postmodernism was published, we celebrated with a hug. You can find this book in ebooks, which is wonderful in our EMU library, which means many, many people can read it at the same time. And also it's on e-reserve, or it's reserved for 2 hours in the library. And so I hope, again, you heard this. Please read this book. It will change your life. And with us today, we have the person who wrote her foreword, Malafa Ashanti, who will be speaking with us in a few minutes. But this is what he said about the importance of her book. In a rare display of the combination of brilliance and boldness, Ana Ferreira has written about the annihilating impact of contemporary globalization in a manner that will cause many sensitive theorists to pause. The reason this is so is because her appropriation of two important tropes of the current dialogue in the academy, the inhumane and agency, has created an intellectual tension that has resulted in a proposed rupture of the normal process and technocratic hegemony inspired by a runaway philosophy of globalization. Obviously, Ferreira seeks to change the paradigm and shift the discourse around the issue of theory, and has constructed a very useful argument about the role of African culture in expanding the inquiry into human value. This indeed is an important scholarly contribution. In January 2017, you had heard Doug Baker talk about this already. There was a racist graffiti incident the semester before, and faculty in the College of Arts and Sciences came together because they wanted to create a workshop series through the Faculty Development Center to help faculty be able to have the tools to have difficult conversations with students. Ana kicked off the Uncomfortable Discussion series with her presentation titled, Let's Break the Silence, a 10-point conversation about racism. And this is what her presentation was about. In order to deconstruct racial fallacies, we need to understand the origins, motives, and goals of racist ideologies, identify the so-called scientific foundations of social stratification, and demystify racial superiority, whiteness, and entitlement. We've recorded this presentation, and we have the link on the Faculty Development website. If you would like to listen and watch this presentation, you can go to the Faculty Development Center homepage and find the link to that presentation. Anna was a passionate and a dynamo of a woman. She was a model faculty member. She also had a tender side, and I'm not sure that she showed that to just anyone. I'd like to read the last paragraph of the acknowledgement section of her book, which is dedicated to her husband. I am particularly reverent and humble in remembering and acknowledging those without whom I would not be the person I am today. My longing parents for whom I learned the deep lessons of humanity, freedom, and justice. Lessons of resistance and struggle for a more human world, without which it's not worthwhile to live. And my building blocks, Joe, I'm maybe mispronouncing the name, thank you, and our children, Sophia and Pedro, who are all here today, the powerhouse of my strength and the meaning of my life. And my beloved sister, Olympia Maria, an unconditional anchor in all the walks of my life. All family, the living and departed, the friends whose support and example have always been a source of inspiration and comfort. This work is dedicated to Joe, my husband and my unconditional friend. Out of his love, this project turned into a reality. Such a beautiful legacy you've helped your wife accomplish. Out of love, this project became a reality. Thank you all. My life has meaning because of you. And Anna, our life has meaning because of you. We often don't know what we've had until it's gone. Thank you, Anna, for being a model, faculty member, trusted colleague, and friend. You will be remembered.
Another colleague who worked very closely with Dr. Ferreira is none other than Professor Ronald Woods of the Department of Africology and African American Studies.
Thank you, Dr. Okafor and colleagues, yes, Professor Asante, those who've spoken before me, surely, and to the family here. Thank you so much for your presence in this day. In the history of our world, coursing from Africa to the Americas and to the global diaspora, African people have cultivated a long and sustaining intellectual and cultural tradition over decades and centuries and indeed millennia. That tradition has sought to express the inner essence of Black life, the conditions of their existence at any point in time, and to project paths toward a future that would be sustainable and life-affirming. This noon hour, for just a very few moments, I do want to try to situate Dr. Ferreira within that very long tradition. Though enslavement of Africans in the Western Hemisphere was so circumscribing in many ways, the resilience of the people prevailed. And whether in fields or cabins in the plantation south or in cloistered and public spaces in the geographies of quasi-freedom in this country, Black folks nurtured this tradition through activism of various sorts, through institution building, and through spiritual, literary, entrepreneurial, political activities. Through Reconstruction and the era of Jim Crow segregation, Blacks cultivated this look at their inner lives, their material conditions, and their futures. Whether it's through the advocacy for slave pensions by Callie Howes, the work of a William Leo Hansberry or a Lorraine Hansberry, Raleigh and Woodson, Du Bois, Bethune, A.G. Gaston, Nkrumah, Randolph, Houston, Williams, Padmore, Benjamin Mays, Vernon Johns, the cohort of individuals that we call the segregated scholars, or here quite locally, Gwen Calvert Baker, Maud Forbes, Eugene Beatty, S.L. Robeson, Reverend C.W. Carpenter, Engineer Frederick Pelham. This is a tradition that was always looking inward, always analyzing, and always crafting a road forward. This tradition was central, whether it was in the genre that we think of as civil rights, human rights, Pan-African activism. It formed a symbiotic relationship that undergirded both the civil rights movement and the Black empowerment movements in this country. And in the late 1960s, this symbiotic relationship came to center upon the college campuses of our country, and the call for greater inclusion, for representation, and for equity. But central to this call was a challenge to the academy to research and to teach, to apply a body of knowledge that reflected the operating realities of our national and our global communities. And whether that rubric might have been Black studies, African American studies, Africana studies, or Africology, programs arose to decipher why the successes of the modern civil rights movement, why these successes had not fundamentally transformed this country. To this task, Dr. Anna Ferrara would turn her attention, having prevailed in a glorious way in the interview process, and having convinced all of us that she was the person needed at Eastern Michigan University at this period of time. Anna would come, and with aplomb, with passion, with skill, she would argue that systems and structures and protocols and operations are but the outward manifestation of a corrosive national psyche and global psyche, if you will. For us in the United States and in locations globally, racial hierarchy and racism were operating dynamics, she observed, which one could only address if one understood them. This passion was central to the courses that she developed, to the scholarship that she undertook, and thank you, Ms. Liggett, for that today. And as with so many who labor in the vineyards of academic fields that are designed to bring from the margins to come to the center, Anna did not have the luxury to be only a teacher and only a researcher. The imperative of practically extending Africology and African American studies into the broader institutional domain led her naturally to her lead role in the Masters of Arts program in Africology. It led her quite often to speak truth to power in various college councils, and it led her to tackling the challenge of diversity and inclusion at Eastern Michigan University. Dr. Anna Monteiro-Ferreira took the baton in the work of this rich and deep intellectual and cultural tradition of African peoples. She journeyed here for a while with us here at Eastern Michigan University and left us a much richer institution for what she has done. For this, we offer thanks to her family for having shared her with us, and thanks above for this spirit at this moment in time.
Is the EMU Gospel Choir here? This is your time. Such a pleasure in speaking in Anna's last days with her family and with her husband Jean. He asked me in particular if we could have some gospel music today, especially from students. And so it's my great honor to introduce the Eastern Michigan University Gospel Choir.
Drops
It's my pleasure now to introduce Dr. Keon Petaway, who is an assistant professor of communication, and he is chair of our College of Arts and Sciences Council and Subcommittee on Diversity and Inclusion. Keon.
Good afternoon. To the Ferreira family, to students, faculty, staff of the Department of Africology and African American Studies, to the EMU community, to distinguished guests and friends, it is an honor to be with you today on behalf of the College of Arts and Sciences Committee on Diversity and Inclusion. We gather here today to celebrate the life of a giant whose shoulders many of us stand on and have relied upon. So as we cherish the memory and legacy of our dear friend and our colleague, our gathering today provides us with a space to consider the following question. What does it take to enact a life directed toward being an agent of change? What does it take? My personal story, last story that I had with Anna was over the summers. I was chairing a thesis project that was based upon how to understand African American hymns within the paradigm of Afrocentricity. And particularly the last time that I saw Anna, which was a couple of days before her passing, noticing that something was going on. Her last words to me, we were in a rush, didn't have time to talk. First day of classes, we're all running. And the first thing she says to me was not hello, was not can I talk to you about something. It was, we got to sign that thesis paper so I can get it in for Keith. The concern for someone else, the concern to change not only your circumstances, your surroundings, but to enact that change so that others can carry that on forward. Today, I would like to share a few ways that Anna's unwavering commitment provides us with a blueprint for modeling an agent of change. In particular, as a member of the Committee on Diversity and Inclusion, Anna architected and modeled a framework for advocacy through critical engagement, social innovation, and inclusive participation. And we can kind of see this train moving from how you use those three pillars: research, teaching, and service in order to enact some sort of change. She did this not only in her community, but even here at EMU in her classes. She did it at the level of the college. So that's the unsung work that people don't see, right? She was not concerned with being out in the front, taking up space. She was more concerned about advocating for someone else. So following the racist incident on EMU's campus, as you have heard a little bit today, the College of Arts and Sciences created a committee that was to address and explore the issues of race at EMU. The 2016-17 committee, their questions and efforts centered on difficult discussions in the classroom, faculty perceptions of students from lower socioeconomic communities, and how the university might better use data on students' perceptions and feelings around race. Anna continued this critical engagement as a point of advocacy regarding race and racism with supported facts and data as a way to expand the mission, policies, practices, and resources for diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout the College of Arts and Sciences. So for instance, on December 1st, 2017, Anna presented research from her Dimensions of Racism, a course that she taught in the Department of Africology and African American Studies at our committee's fall plan retreat. The study focused on students' research about how other EMU students perceive and feel about race and racism. And it provided an evidence-based record of what kinds of changes are needed regarding diversity, inclusion, and equity here at EMU. This moved to that second kind of level, the ways in which we might enact some kind of social change. She took that evidence-based research and moved it into a sphere of social innovation. What does that mean? For Anna, the study didn't simply represent any data points or simply research that identifies issue areas that the university and the college must address. For her, it provided the impetus for advocating for students through productive social innovations that challenge systems of oppression. And paraphrasing Anna, she stated that most of the students from her classes expressed that there was a lack of places to gain awareness and address the relevant issues that students had identified and noted in her study. So what did she do? She stated and she proposed workshops providing awareness and education that are necessary, as she said, to support a supportive campus. Thus, these topics derive from her discussions with students, and the topics including those such as stereotypes and representation, white privilege, systemic racism, and issues of racism as perceived by students at EMU. But in gaining this kind of first level of this one level of critical engagement, social innovation as form of advocacy, she was also very concerned with what it means to have inclusive participation. And for her, this might not mean exactly what we might see in our dominant representation of what inclusivity looks like. She was talking about true inclusivity, that disrupted dominant and oppressive systems, even in our education system, at the college level, university level, in the classroom, and particularly in our communities and our democracy. This was the same tenet that she had when engaging with faculty. She stood firm on her beliefs, her positions, and her commitment, but this did not mean disinvitation of other ideas and perspectives. For Anna, it meant opening up spaces to collaboratively adopt, challenge, and sharpen our critical consciousness that are aimed at identifying and subverting oppressive systems, especially those that disproportionately impact students of African and African American descent and other marginalized backgrounds. In this sense, Anna invited students to also offer their perceptions and their contributions in a space wherein normally they are held to some kind of unintelligible status of what they might provide in terms of change in the discourse of the institution. Anna wasn't about that life. There is no amount of time or choice of words to capture the breadth and the impact of Anna's life. But in the time and the range of words and emotions that we have today, let us honor Anna by committing to critical engagement and thought, spurring productive social innovations, and creating spaces that are truly inclusive for human flourishing and well-being. We will miss her deeply and remain thankful for being in the midst of a giant who was truly an agent of change in many ways than we can count. Thank you.
I'm going to introduce myself. I've already been up here before. I'm just speechless, really, with, in the face of the words and the eloquence that has gone before. And I don't have much to add to all of that, but I will speak from my position as a friend. So Anna was my friend. She was also my colleague, and we served together on the college level committees, the CAC, and most recently in the College Advisory Committee on Diversity and Inclusion. But today I speak her name and her fine qualities for my position of friendship. Anna was born on August 25th, 1949, in the small railroad town of Auditorium, north of Lisbon in Portugal. Anna was the eldest of two children, and her younger sister, Olympia, is here today in Portugal. Anna's father was a railroad man, and he managed and supervised the railway in her town. After World War I, Portugal underwent some volatile economic and political conditions that included multiple coups, both military and political, that culminated in 1933 in the, get this, corporatist authoritarian dictatorship of Salazar, Antonio de Salazar. This regime was characterized by the loss of personal liberties, repression of the free press, repression of workers' unions, and repression of the intelligentsia, where scholars and students were routinely oppressed or forced into military service and sent off to wars in Africa. Anna was born into and existed within this incredible system of repression, and she grew in this until the age of 25, when in 1974, the Portuguese Revolution took back their government and created a democratic form of government. Anna's own father was a member of the opposition and was exiled from his position and family, being forcibly transferred to an outpost in the far northeast of the country. Both Anna and João have shared that her child's mind was full of questions and ideas. João's phrase is that Anna was sharply curious, and I'm sure you can imagine, those of us who've worked with her can imagine what her child's mind was like. I can just only imagine. There was so much she wanted to know. She was a deep thinker even as a child, wanted to know beneath the surface of things. And Anna used to share the story that there was one person, a doctor, who seemed to have kind of a special touch with listening to her and understanding her questions, offering her the attention that she needed. He talked with her carefully and helped her understanding, and he answered all of her questions, and he corrected her very gently when she was mistaken. João tells me that he was the first person to give Anna a sense of feeling heard. Many women of our generation know this story. And remember that person, that one person who maybe allowed us to speak our truth into the air for the first time. So it was into this deeply repressive culture that Anna grew and developed her sense of justice. As a student and understand, during this time in this repressive regime, to be a student was not like being a student now. To be a student was risky. It was a risky place to be. To be a student in the Salazar regime was a very different experience. There was a strong student union, strong student political movement at that time, and Anna was very much a part of that, as I'm sure some of you can imagine. And it was a strong enough movement to put the government in real danger, real jeopardy. And so there was governmental crackdown on these students. Anna told me many times that some of her friends were forcibly exiled into the military. She said they went missing, they disappeared. And we know that by that, she meant they were forced into the military and sent to Angola, Mozambique, or Bissau, in order to participate in these unjust wars in these areas. So she was deeply against this occupation of African nations. And I think this is part of the climate that allowed the seeds of justice to turn themselves toward Africology and African American studies. Certainly the seeds of her great passion for fighting injustices of all kinds, and we haven't talked today about the fact that she was also a feminist. Her master's degree was in women's studies from Portugal, and she was an author and a feminist as well. Indeed, here in EMU, we were both hired in the same year, and I see Amanda Allen is here. You were part of our group, and Howard Cass is part of our group, and there might be others that was part of our group that were hired at the same time. I had decided I was going to reach out, and I just want to say that Anna reminded me of this just a week ago on Sunday when I was in the hospital with her. She reminded me, she said, that what you said to me on that day made us fast friends. And what I said to her was, what's a nice Portuguese girl like you doing in African American studies? And she said, really, without missing a beat, who better? Portuguese have been oppressing African nations for centuries. Who better? And I said, well, I can't argue with that. So she recognized also that my pronunciation of her name was pretty good, and she said, are you Portuguese? And I said, well, my family's Portuguese, so my mother and my mother's side of the family is Portuguese. So we had another bond there. And so over these 8 years, we have spent so much time together, shared our sorrows, our frustrations, our challenges about being academics on a personal level, issues of being women in an academic setting, for sure. And then nice, lovely things like sharing orphans' American Thanksgiving dinners and monthly nights out, and we were fitness partners, so we went to the gym every week and we had coffee every Saturday to debrief our week. So we had a strong friendship. Also today, you've heard amazing stories about her strength and her just extraordinary, she's just a splendid woman. I want to speak this truth into the air, and that Anna was extremely kind. She was thoughtful, always. She exemplified Portuguese hospitality and generosity. And she loved all of the arts. I don't think she missed a School of Music and Dance recital in Pease Auditorium. I think she went to every single one of them. She and I attended many concerts around in the Ann Arbor area. And you might not know that she was also an artist. She painted, she drew, she is responsible, she drew the illustration as the cover of her book. That was her artwork. And she reconnected to her art just this past January, where she felt she wanted to express herself in an artistic way again because she was feeling the burden of being very in her head, and she wanted to get some of those feelings out onto canvas. She also had an incredible sense of space. She could see a room and know how to remodel it without ever building a plan. And her sense of incredible architecture extended to her writing. She and I went on several writer retreats together, and she would just say, yeah, I know what I'm going to say, I just have to have the time to sit down and say it. I've got it all there. It's all there in my mind. I don't know how many of you have heard her say that, but it's really true. Anna, as a whole person, she deeply loved her husband, João. She loved her children, Sophia and Pedro. She loved her sister, Olympia, very much. She loved her home and her garden and her dogs, and these were all very important parts of her. They were really important. They provided the balance for this extraordinary intellectualism and this extraordinary sense of action that she had. She was grounded and balanced in home and family and arts. It's true. So Anna and João met 50-odd years ago now in a high school play, and they starred together. And João said, wow, that woman, she's got a lot going on. So they started dating, and there's never been another person for either of them. So all these years together. And I will also say that, you know, he spent night and day at that hospital this past week, not going home, you know, and never left her alone for a moment. Anna was not alone when she died. So I speak her name with great affection and with pride, and it still baffles my mind that I would have such a friend in life who was wonderful. So, I'm going to say her name one more time. Ana Maria Monteiro-Ferreira. Wife, mother, sister, friend, colleague, scholar, author, warrior, feminist, artist. Anna, I speak your name, and we all speak your name. I would like now to introduce our second musical interlude of the day. Happy to introduce Zakaya and Sakina Raman, who will sing a song for us.
Hello everyone, my name is Zakia, and I'm Sakina. My name is purity in Arabic, and my name means tranquility in Arabic. Unfortunately, we were not able to meet Dr. Anna Ferreira. I hope I said her name right. But we see with all the kind words that we've been able to hear today that we were very unfortunate not to be able to meet her. Today we're going to sing a song that we feel stands for something that she was. It's called Lift Every Voice and Sing. I don't know if some of you all may have heard of it. And I also want to pinpoint something about the word lift every voice and sing. The word lift every voice and sing uses the word every single voice. And I'm pretty sure with everything that I've heard today that she was able to do it. Before we get started, if you all are able and want to, please hold hands. Oh, we can. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven reign. with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening sky. Let us resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought. Facing the rising sun, new days begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Thank you. At this point, I have the honor and privilege to introduce to you easily the foremost Africologist in our nation, in the person of none other than Dr. Monteiro-Ferreira Asante. He's a professor and chair of the Department of Africology and African American Studies at Temple University. Dr. Asante happens to be the founder of the first PhD program in African American Studies in 1989. Dr. Asante also happens to be the person who served as my major advisor when I did my PhD at Temple. And years later, he served as the major advisor for our lead colleague, Dr. Ferreira. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in bringing Dr. Asante as the guest speaker of the day.
On an occasion like this, when you have heard so many wonderful things, you sit and you wonder what is there left to say. But when you have had real personal experiences with someone, there is always something to say. To Jean, husband, Olympia, older sister, Pedro and Sophia, children, and her special friend, Teresa Romero, and Dr. Okafor, chair of her department, and her colleagues, and students at Eastern Michigan University, and to representatives from the Dean's office. I bring simple words. When my wife, Ana Yaninga, and I saw Ana Maria 4 months ago at her beautiful and comfortable home in Santarém, Portugal, we did not know that she was in the twilight of her life. Neither did she. And we, Ana Yaninga and I and Joan, visited all the special places of their youthful days. We walked the stone plazas at the University at Coimbra. Took special attention to note the place where they, as young lovers, communicated with clotheslines and bells and whistles to wake Jean up, he was sleeping. Ana Maria was so very happy. Her children, Pedro and Sophia, were the best children. With the exception of her grandchildren, Oscar and Alex. She could tell you everything about each of them, and their dreams and hers for them. She gave a paper at the ancient University of Coimbra that was one of her best, and she spoke often of her real mentor. I was just a second figure. The real mentor, Laura Perez, whom I met several times. She introduced me to Dr. Laura Perez, who had inspired her so much. Ana loved her husband, adored her children, and could not stop talking about Oscar and Alex, and could entertain you with how good her sister Olympia was and how mischievous she could be herself. She loved Olympia like no other and spoke of her often with deep affection. We today have lost a friend, a comrade against all forms of oppression and all hierarchies of the society. To Dr. Victor Okafor, she was grateful that he had hired her and showed confidence in her ability as an intellectual leader in Africology. Dr. Ana Monteiro-Ferreira enjoyed a great debate and was always committed to her students, her department, her university, and discipline. Her family knew her for the fire that burned in her eyes or the twinkle that sparked in them when she knew she was jesting with you. As she spoke what she knew was truth, her friends stood in awe of her strength and generosity. Our dearly beloved Ana Maria Monteiro-Ferreira was feisty, sometimes stubborn, always principled, consistent, outspoken, trustworthy, and dependable. She was firm and fair, strict and compassionate, caring and critical if necessary. I found her brilliant, but sometimes self-effacing, with a deep passion for accountability, communication, honest relationships, and good governance. She once accosted me for not communicating with my wife, as I should have, about something that was worrying to her. I had to take my criticism, and I did, as others of her friends and family had probably before me. In the end, she was correct, and I needed correction. But it hurt her when she did not live up to what others expected of her. I remember when traveling in Egypt with she and Jean, I had asked the group not to purchase anything from vendors who had crowded the doors of the buses. And they would come and they would crowd the doors and they would yell at the people in the buses to buy things. And I said, you know, if you start buying, then you will have 20 people, maybe 30 or 40 vendors standing here, and we won't be able to leave. And I did this more out of, but what happened was that Ana engaged in the process anyway, more out of concern for the poor vendors than anything else. Soon we had lots of people haggling at us for purchases. I spoke to her firmly because it caused a great commotion. This pained her, and she understood that I was trying to maintain the decorum of the group. I believe that she forgave me. I certainly forgave her because there was nothing evil in her heart. She was just, that's the way Anna was. She was against all forms of oppression. She didn't like people to be in poverty. But I never detected any resentment, any racial animosity, or any ethnic rancor in her presentations, in her style, or in her life. Equally relevant and consistent was her relentless exposition of the role ignorance and irrationality played in contemporary society. She never surrendered to superstition and did not allow her reasoning ability to venture far from the profound sense of personal commitment she had to integrity, honesty, and discipline. I am certain that powerful ideas, concepts, and actions filled her brain and remain hidden in infinity as we celebrate the transition of this supremely human woman and her remarkably, unmistakably propensity for action, talk, and fun. We laughed with her so much, and Ana Nina and I sat at her table with joy and ate of her delicious food when she came to Philadelphia or when she prepared it in Portugal. We shared so much of our own personal histories, but it was her courage, her ambition, and her sincere reach to fulfill her destiny and leave an intellectual legacy that made her run toward excellence. Yes, Ana Maria was a world-class scholar. She published her book, The Demise of the Inhuman, with one of the major university presses in the country. This action itself has ensured her recognition as a scholar of importance and as a leader in our discipline. She knew poetry, art, literature, and could speak with anyone about the leaders and arguments in women's studies. I believe that she spent most of her days at Easton writing, researching, teaching the theories of Afrocentricity. Indeed, she was always speeding, trying to catch time's chariot as it seemed to fly faster each day. I am no poet with the words and work of Ana Maria Monteiro-Ferreira, and I have no artistic calibration or emotional valuations of what she could have been and would have been other than who she was as a great human being, a wonderful friend and a dear colleague. In numerous ways, Ana Maria was not just a friend, she was also a constant intellectual sparring partner. She was a competitor who was dependable, a friend who gave friendship a new meaning and poignant significance in this age of slack friendships and deceitful affiliations. You always knew where she stood, even if you felt the sharp edge of her mind. But you were never in any danger of losing a friend over an argument. I do not want to paint my friend, our colleague, with perfection. She was not like that because she knew and recognized that there were times when a streak of stubbornness on some issue came out as rigidity, when her impatience flared up as temperamentality, when the sheer force of her conviction aroused a feeling of inadequacy in others. But with honest spirit, the passion was often the person, and the person was often the passion. She felt intensely and thought profoundly, but between her heart and her mind, there was not much space. The distance was very short. She detested the ascendancy of mediocrity and always looked for real friendships. Ana was always at her best in the midst of students, young minds among whom she tried out her ideas with no fear. As a scholar and a demanding teacher, she was an intellectual who regarded feisty argumentation as part of the reality of life. She never settled for half measures. We loved her as our sister and counted her among the best intellectuals in our discipline. We have already missed her, and when the dawn comes tomorrow, we will miss her even more. Yet I am confident that the light will shine brightest where she has been, when we think of her teaching, lecturing, laughing, and enjoying her family. So we gathered here, and we have gathered here at this wonderful memorial. We have all known and seen a woman, true and proud, one who was modest in objectives, but firm in her vision of what was possible. She kept truths and justice's company without faltering. And here we must go on singing her praises to honor her memory forever. Ashe.
Pleasure to introduce Dr. João Monteiro-Ferreira, who will speak on behalf of the family.
Good afternoon, all of you. My friends, in my personal name and of my family, I want to acknowledge the presence of everyone and the dedication and effort of those who came to organize this sad and magnificent moment of sharing and recognition. As I listened to your eloquent and emotional testimonies, the music and the singers, I was wondering about how my wife would feel happy she knew this wonderful wave of respect and love. We wish to thank the academic authorities and the director of the Department of Africology and African Studies, Dr. Victor. A personal thanks goes to two special people, Dr. Tara Merrill, who has long been my wife's best friend in Michigan, who has devotedly accompanied her in the swiftest days of her fatal illness, and has been the unwavering support of her family in the present difficult days. Another special thanks to Dr. Molefikete Asante and his wife Anna. He as mentor and both as friends who have become since the times of Philadelphia, my brother and my sister by heart. But above all, I want to thank you, the young people to whom my wife worked enthusiastically with her passion, was to teach, and her students were the reason for her work, the center of her everyday life. She lived with enthusiasm without fail the mission of explaining, demonstrating, and inspiring, seeking to fulfill William Arthur Ward's words. Teaching is more than imparting knowledge, it is inspiring change. Learning is more than absorbing facts, it is acquiring understanding. We know that time will erase or eventually erase her memory, especially among those who knew little or did not meet with her. But for those of us who knew her well, who lived with her and with her radiant influence, those who have received the influx of her magisterium, we know in this turbulent and challenging world we live, life will not us forget. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you who have contributed to making this day what it has been. We indeed will miss Dr. Ferreira. As you all heard, her journey through Eastern Michigan University was transformative and impactful. Well, leaving this planet is a fate that awaits all of us, and someday we shall meet again. At this point, I would like to make an announcement. Dr. Anna Ferreira played a lead role in the formulation of our newly established Master of Arts in Africology and African American Studies. We talked a lot about the ways and means by which we would make this program one of the best in the country. She planned to travel to Nigeria to meet with some colleagues at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. We planned to work on a book on African philosophy together. But, well, it did not happen. But we pledge to keep her legacy alive. We pledge to do all that we can to make that Master of Arts one of the most enviable in the nation. And as a way to immortalize her contribution to that program, I have worked with the Development Office of the College of Arts and Sciences to establish an Anna Ferreira Scholarship in the Master of Arts for Africology and African American Studies at Sept. I have also volunteered to be the first donor, and I've given my check towards it, and I call upon you to do the same. Thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to call upon my colleague, Dr. Merrill, to make our own closing remarks, and thereafter we shall begin our march towards the MLK Plaza. Thank you.
As I invite the choir to make their way back down the stairs to close us in song, I just have a very short reading. She whom we love and lose is no longer where she was before. She is now wherever we are. We're going to begin the candlelight march to the Martin Luther King Plaza. From the ground floor, anyone who might have a mobility issue would like to be this way. This is where we're going, and thank you so much for coming.
You're not going on the march, right? So I'm going to leave this here. So.
Yeah, so